I work for the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, and I'm the director of the American Democracy Project. So the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, or ASCU as we call it, is an organization, a membership organization for regional public universities. And so about 21 years ago, they started the American Democracy Project because they saw and they were worried about the state of democracy, which probably seems quaint back then in 2003, but we continually find new ways to make sure that civic engagement is put forward on regional public university campuses. And so my job is to think through how strategically institutions can put it into play, and also how faculty and staff and administrators can be supported and make sure that the students become engaged and excited and informed global citizens.
And when you do this, do you feel like, I would call it almost like an olive cultivator, like you're laying the groundwork for long-term change? Or do you feel more like you're a little bit like an EMT, like we have democracy under stress, let's figure out how people can relearn and learn the values of it. So is there a balance there?
I would say that there's a little bit of a balance, but for the most part, I would say that we are cultivating, because we're really working within the system of higher education. And higher education itself is a long-term process. There's turnover every year. We get new students in and more students graduated. So there's that kind of continuation of a cycle. And universities themselves are very complex beings in and of themselves. So that really, we're trying to figure out how do you institutionalize something. But there is that idea that, and I think we've understood that democracy is under threat. And so the different ways that we look at misinformation, at diversity, equity, and inclusion work, how we understand having dialogues and understanding what people are talking about, all of that is very to the moment. And you have to be able to say and to realize that people are coming at it from different directions. So it is kind of a puzzle that can never quite be solved, but right. It's a long 3D puzzle that I find fun, at least, to try to, and encouraging in a way that people are slowly putting pieces together for themselves, but bringing it back to their, and kind of hopefully putting it into place for their professional careers too.
So you mainly work with faculty and the administration. Do you get a sense of whether the programs they put into place end up creating a lot of student leadership and student ownership of it? A lot of initiative?
I think that's the exciting part. The American Democracy Project, or ADP, when it started, we really started at lots of different campuses. So a lot of different campuses will have their own ADPs. So occasionally I'll have students who say that they work for ADP, and it'll be nice to be able to see them at one of our national conferences. But really, they're doing the work. The students are doing the work. Right. There on campus with faculty and staff. And they're embedding it in so many different ways, through voter engagement, of course, but also there's deep ideas of how do you do deliberative dialogues? How do you think about economic literacy or global civic literacy? And so it's been really encouraging to see faculty and staff try to put it into a multidisciplinary, kind of have civic engagement as a multidisciplinary idea.
And you probably almost certainly, these programs are engaging the poli-sci types. Do they reach a broader audience on campus? Because civic virtue is something, whatever walk of life you're going to end up in, we hope you have it.
Exactly, and I think that's the interesting thing to me, that poli-sci for quite some time, that's where civic engagement lived. But really within the past 15 years or so, it's become much more of a broader culture that it doesn't just live in poli-sci. It certainly does, and we appreciate the poli-sci interest, but that there's the idea that the business community understands why civic engagement matters. Sciences and the humanities, the critical discourse that the humanities bring to it is, it's encouraging, but I love it when theater majors, when art majors, the different ways that graphic design right. thinks about how they can still have a civic impact. I think that's really what makes civic engagement unique, and helps to strengthen the mission and values of all of these regional public universities too.
I think of it sometimes in terms of the best career advice I ever heard someone give. I think it was in the context of a graduation speech, which was, don't try to figure out what you want to do. Try to figure out what you want to see change, and then figure out how you can do that, what part you can play. Because I think whatever career you end up deciding on, it gives you a sense of value and purpose in it. And that's probably very common for people to engage the American Democracy Project.
I think so. I mean, that's interesting though, because sometimes I don't think that I think in terms of a career, because I changed rather definitively in a number of careers, and so even kind of coming at it from the perspective of find what you enjoy,
Yes,
and then keep investigating what things are out there and why it matters to you at this time in your life. I mean that's what I find particularly engaging, that everybody's kind of coming at it from different lenses, different life experiences that they've had. So, it may not be that it's part of their career even, but to be a civically engaged citizen. That's why I mean it's amazing when people are figuring out how they want to help their elementary schools, when they realize, well, our kids don't have free lunches or something, school lunches. Maybe I should maybe I should be an advocate for that. So I think advocacy can be an avenue into civic engagement too.
I feel totally busted because I've been on career advisory, appointed to career advisory committees. Mm-hmm. I've spoken at career educator events, like as subject matter expert. And I feel like I haven't really had a career. I've done different things, and I've done it like I've tried to pursue what I think can make a difference, but I wouldn't. It doesn't add up to much of a career. Okay, my last question for you. Do you have hope that we can hold the fort and preserve democracy in America? And if you do, what is it that gives you that hope?
That's a good question, and I get it a lot because within my particular realm of work, there's always a lot of anxiety around what's happening in the world, and I think it's easy for that. I will say, the more that I work at this job, the more hope that I have, because I see what lots of people are trying to do, and that attempt is really, that's the encouragement that I need to keep going with it. I was also encouraged this year by 2024 was the year of world elections, not just the U.S. elections, but 50% of the world's population possibly could have the chance to vote this year. And looking around and realizing, wait a second, I don't know as much about India's elections as I should, and finding that there were opportunities to continue my understanding of the scale of autocracy to democracy. That's been an encouragement to me that I can, and that's kind of where the hope is, that there's a lot of different things happening in the world. I can't just focus in on one particular race or one particular country, but to instead realize, hey, wait a second, if I'm thinking about democracy as a whole, how do I understand the past, the future of it? I've been reading a really interesting book about just Roman democracy and what I thought was a pretty tried and true understanding of the Senate populace. Wow, it's a little bit more complex. So I mean, I kind of find hope from people working in it, but also realizing that I'm just one point in time, and that I can keep learning, and that's really what brings me a little bit of hope.
So I, as a tourist, was in Thailand during an election in the mid-1990s, and I was in kind of a remote village, and I don't speak Thai, so I was relying entirely on the visual. But seeing people vote and seeing them gather to have the results reported, because they weren't at home sitting on the TVs. They were gathered in this town, and they were putting the results up on billboards.
Oh wow!
And there were men with big markers in heavy equipment being raised up so they could write the vote, and everyone like hundreds of people sitting around engaged, and it was feeling that real human side of democracy that certainly inspired me.
It is, and seeing how other countries think about it. I mean, when the Mexican government or when the Mexican people found the first woman president. That
Right.
was really exciting. Even if both candidates, one or the other was going
Right.
to win, but that's so exciting to see that, and then to read more about how did that really come to fruition in Mexico. Well, it's because several years ago they put into place that their electoral Congress has to be 50%
Right.
female, and so that idea of saying, wow, what are other countries doing? How are they understanding democracy, or not understanding
Right.
it, as the case may be, and how can we bring that conversation into students, just to kind of seed those ideas of what matters to you, and how can you bring those ideas forward, and hopefully engage them to get excited about democracy.
All right. Well, thank you for all you do.